Welcome to the Traveling Professors. I'm Professor Bob.
And I'm Professor Sheri.
And together we are
the Traveling Professors.
Actually, today it's welcome to the Traveling Professors and Little Professor Emma as well, because today's show is a little special show, which is why I've numbered it 105B. It's about the cruise that my youngest daughter Courtney and her husband Andy, and of course Little Professor Emma, took from Greece to Venice. And so we're going to be following some of the things that they did. Now, when Courtney and the family stayed in Athens, they didn't stay at our usual hotel, the Amalia Hotel, because with Emma's epilepsy and her special diet, they need to have access to a greater variety of food to keep her from having seizures. So she has an Airbnb, and so they stayed in the Placa, approximately right in here, and they had access to a refrigerator, and they also had a market, and then of course they brought specialized food along with them. So here's a picture from their B&B looking out onto the Acropolis. And so that's Little Professor Emma. The last time you saw her, we were in Colorado at the dinosaur area, and she was in kindergarten, and now she's finishing the 3rd grade. And she brought with her Lily. Now, there's an interesting story with Lily, and that is because her mother, when she was about the same age, we went on a trip to Nashville. And, of course, we were always showing the kids stuff in museums, pointing it out. And her mother, as a small child, had a Cabbage Patch doll, and she started in Nashville taking it and showing her the stuff and pointing to it. And so Emma decided to bring her Cabbage Patch doll and do the same thing to mimic her mother. So here's a night view of the Acropolis from their Airbnb with a little bit of telephoto action on it. And the next day they went up. They came in early, a couple of days, so they could do some special stuff. And one of the problems that we were worried about was getting up to the Acropolis, because she can walk, but this is pretty tiring for adults. And so they have a special stroller for her when she gets tired, because what happens is if she gets too tired and hot, and that's what triggers a seizure. As they get to the Acropolis, you can see it off to the side. It looks like a construction crane. That is a new elevator system that they have installed on the Acropolis for people in wheelchairs and elderly people and people with children. So they got to go up this. Unfortunately, they didn't take any pictures because Courtney said the view is spectacular. Then we have some required photographs. So here is Little Professor Emma standing in front of the Parthenon. I will let her explain what's going on.
Say hi, I'm Emma.
Hi, Emma.
We're at the Acropolis.
We are Acropolis.
That's the Parthenon behind me.
There a partner behind me.
Point to it.
Of course, we have the picture of Courtney and Andy, her husband, and there's Emma and Lily in front of the Parthenon. Now notice the construction on the Parthenon, because this completes the family picture. Because here's Matt and Laura, my oldest daughter and her husband, when we were on our cruise with them 12 years ago or 13 years ago. And you can see the amount of construction that was going on. And then here is, of course, Professor Bob and Professor Sheri on that same trip. Fortunately, the whole family has been lucky enough to be able to do this. Now, the only person who got cheated is Laura's son, Connor, because obviously he's not in the picture. So we're probably going to have to Photoshop him into one of these pictures until they go back and visit and get the same picture themselves. They had a little list of things to see. So they went to see the caryatid porch, and then they took the view of the Agora. They didn't get a chance to go down to the Agora, but here's one of the pictures of the Agora, and then here's the other section of it where you can see the Temple of Hephaestus. But they did one thing that we hadn't done as well, and that is they were able to go over to the place where the assembly met. So they took this picture from where the assembly met in Athens every month, and you can see the Acropolis in the background. And then this is a little better view of the Acropolis, a little cloudier than when we were there the first time. After having some lunch, after going up the Acropolis, they stopped at the Acropolis Museum. And when we were there years ago, you couldn't go down on this lower level. But as you can see, they could see a lot of the early construction of Athens. And of course, there's Emma with Lily. And there's another one of these. This looks like the drainage area for part of the town. Then they go into the museum. So they showed Emma which finger to use and pointing at different figurines. And then they started taking some art pictures. Emma used Courtney's phone, and then they put Lily in the picture to get some pictures of some art. So here's Lily with one of the statues, and here's Lily with one of the heads of one of the gods, and then here is Lily standing in front of a great big mock-up of the Acropolis and the old Athens. And then later on they went across to the botanical gardens, and here Courtney has taken one of the pictures I gave her, which shows Sheri and I standing on the bridge years ago before we were married, and then they stood on the bridge to have their picture taken. And so that was what they did in Athens, and they stopped in various cafes and had little drinks and what have you. They also played games at some of them. Now they're ready to go on their cruise. This was the best map that I could find to give you an idea of what they did on their cruise. They left Athens and they went to Santorini, and then from Santorini they went to Mykonos. In Mykonos, they went to this island right here, Xanthia, and from here they went to Corfu, and then they went to Kotar, then Dubrovnik, and then Zadar. They were supposed to then go into Venice and then take a excursion to Ravenna, but instead they went to Ravenna and the cruise ended there. And that made a lot of the people on the cruise ship unhappy because they were expecting to be in Venice for at least a day. But Courtney and Andy had decided to stay an extra day or two, and they were going to stay in Ravenna, but when things had changed a couple of weeks before they left, they made reservations outside of Venice. So they were able to go to Venice and stay and visit one day in the city and then fly out. Well, on Santorini, here's their view from Fira, and then they went to Oia. And this picture was taken with Emma in front of one of the doors with the blooming flowers. And then after they finished at Oie, they went back to Fira and then did another favor for me. They went to the Greco Gold jewelry store. And here is Courtney and Emma with one of the two brothers who run the store. Their father started it. And this is where Sheri and I bought our wedding rings. This is where we bought our 5th anniversary presents. But we weren't able to get back this time. And when Courtney said that they were going on this cruise, I loaded her up with cash. So she bought a necklace to bring back so I could give it to Sheri for our anniversary from Santorini. And they also then ended up giving Emma a really nice little silver necklace with the blue eye on it. So that's their picture. And then this is the last time we were there when the two brothers were in the store at the same time with Sheri. Now when we were there was just 3 cruise ships. Courtney said there were 5 cruise ships. So this place was just packed. They ate at the restaurant that we did right across from the store. And their ship didn't leave at 5 o'clock. Their ship left at dark. So here is the view of Oie as they're sailing out of Santorini to head to Mykonos. In Mykonos, they were able to walk through the whole town and get up to where the windmills were. So here's a view back looking at the little Venice area from up there on the hill. And then they made it to the layer cake church. So here's a picture of Courtney and Emma in front of the layer cake church. And then here is the wonderful windmill section up on top of the hill. And they then explored up in there for a little bit. So here's Emma in front of the door to one of the windmills. And then after being on Mykonos, they headed off to the island of Xanthos, and there they took a little cruise from the ship and went to this area where you have the beach with the damaged ship. That's the whole family, and there's a little better view of the wreckage. And there's some of the beautiful water and a little rock formation that you go through in this area. Actually, the island of Xanthos sits right on the deepest spot of the Mediterranean Sea. Their next stop was the island of Corfu. So what they did was they went up to the fortress. So here's the fortress, and down in front of it they had a really nice beach area. Emma and Courtney were able to go into the water, and Andy went into the water also with Emma. So they got their feet into the Adriatic Sea. Here's Andy walking the beach with Emma. And then here we have one of the towers not too far away from the main fortress, the clock tower. And you see these 2 creatures. That's Spotsy and Puff. Now, these are 2 stuffed animals that Courtney had when she was little that she took with her on vacation. And she has now written a couple of children's books using these 2 animals as a method of traveling with children. And so she brought them along with her on the tour so they could take some pictures that they might use in another book. Her book on the travel to Egypt by Puff and Spotsy comes out in December, and then in the spring, I think Spotsy and Puff will be taking a trip down the Oregon Trail. So then they walked up to where the tower is, get a little better view of the fort, and they found a nice little cafe up there, so they had some lunch there, and here they are playing games. This is how they rested in between, because there are plenty of cafes, and you buy something to eat or something to drink, and you can sit there for a while. And then they got back on the ship, and their next stop was the town of Kotar. Sheri and I have not been to Corfu. We've not been to Kotar either. So here they are coming into the harbor of the small town, and then they get out, and here's one of the main gate entrances, and they walked all the way up to the viewing area above the city to get this beautiful view of the harbor and the old town. And then here's another shot, and you can see their cruise ship at the far right hand side. And then after they walked back down, they found a whole bunch of cats. Sheri and I always take animal treats with us, and Courtney and Emma did too, but Courtney had also found out that people suggested taking a cat toy with them. So here is Emma playing with this cat toy with these 3 different cats, but this black cat's really getting into it. And then here's Emma feeding the cats, and they're very well behaved. Sometimes these are a little on the wild side and they go after the food, but there's another one down below patiently waiting its turn. And they did this in all the little towns that they visited till they ran out of treats. And then there was one of the little fortress pieces on the harbor that they went into. This is what it looks like from away. But if the close-up picture shows Andy and Emma pretending like they're trapped in prison and looking out into the harbor. From Kotar, they went to King's Landing. They went to Dubrovnik. Here's the entrance gate into Dubrovnik. Courtney said that, I told them that the trip in by ship was just stunning, and they said it really was beautiful. There's a view of one of the streets going into the city. They did get up a little high so they could, in one location, so that they could see the city from above, which is a nice view of the harbor. Then they go on into the main town, one of the churches. They had lunch there. They had actually saw several folk dance groups as well. And then they walked around to the other end of the harbor to take this particular picture. And then from Dubrovnik, they went to Zadar. And it's just basically a small town. You use Zadar to take trips out into the countryside to see some of the national parks, and they just didn't do that. After Kotar, they then headed off to Ravenna, and there was a project for them to do in Ravenna, but first they had to go to the main church. So their tour took them to the church of San Vitale, which you see here, the beautiful Byzantine church, which has exquisite mosaics. Now I know they say that the Church of Coria in Constantinople has better mosaics, but I think this one is much larger in scale. And here's a nice view of the buttresses holding up the walls. And then on the interior, Courtney took a picture of where the altar area is, and you see this mosaic of the Empress Theodora. Now when Sheri and I were here years ago, they, in their gift shop, had silk scarves with that on them. They were stunning. They were $100. And so I'd given Courtney some money to pick one of those up. Unfortunately, they didn't sell those anymore. And Courtney actually asked in several places, but no, everybody had stopped making them. And so here's a nice view of the interior of San Vitale. And then they walked through the town, and then here we have the kind of the main square area. You see the tower of one of the other churches. That's the Basilica of St. Apollinare Nuovo that you see in the background. And then they took this picture, which was a surprise. They took this shot down the street, and what you see is at the end is Dante's tomb. And one of the things that's really neat about this picture is when we visited, this area was blocked off in 3 or 4 different areas with chains and things to stop car bombs from going down there, because Dante had gotten on the hit list that with Salman Rushdie since he was in the hell in the Divine Comedy. So the Ayatollah had put the hit numbers on him, but that's been lifted, so they've now made it so you can just wander down there. So then after they left Ravenna, because they went back to Venice, and they stayed in a hotel outside of Venice. They just took the train in from Maastricht in the town. So they went into Venice. So here they are taking the tour of Venice. And again, they have a project. The project is take a picture of St. Mark's. And you go, here they are waving their hands and whatever. And you go, so here's a nice close-up of St. Mark's. And of course, Sheri and I have been here on several occasions. But here's the reason why I asked them to take a picture. The first time we were there on our cruise, this is what the church looked like. As you see, they have one whole side of the church under reconstruction. When we went back 5 years later, here's the picture that we got of St. Mark's. They had finished one side and were working on the other. So I needed a picture of the whole completed church. And Courtney and Emma were able to do that for me. In this picture, where Emma is smiling in front of the Rialto Bridge. Now, there's a funny story with the Rialto Bridge. A couple of years ago, because Emma likes to play all kinds of card games and matching games. And so I made for both grandchildren a set of matching cards, 80 cards, so there are 40 different pictures, of places that Sheri and I had been that were famous. And one of the pictures is the Rialto Bridge. And she was fixated with it. She kept asking Courtney, why is it so different? What's so special about this? And so she keeps saying, well, Bob, that's me. Bob will explain it to you. And so I did. And so when they got to Venice, she wanted this picture in front of the Rialto Bridge and with the big smile. Here's another different view. The other thing she wanted to see is the Bridge of Sighs. And so here's the picture that they took of the Bridge of Sighs. And so they had lunch in the area. They actually had lunch in one of the museums up on the second level and had a nice view of St. Mark's with the bell tower. And then our last picture is there's Emma gleefully standing in front of St. Mark's. And then before we leave, we have to say goodbye to a cat and Spotsy and Fluff. And that was Little Professor Emma's cruise from Athens to Venice. Little Professor Emma and Sheri and I hope you enjoyed the show. Please come by our YouTube channel at Bob Packett, and please subscribe and leave some comments. Thank you very much. I've been doing podcasting on history for over 15 years. I've got over 4,000 shows, and I've done CDs, which of course can be sent out as USBs. So if you would really like to get more on history for free, then come by my website, as you see here, historyaccordingtobob.com, and see what's there. So thank you very much again.